that would be excellent. Okay, Mark.
That would be great. So this is our a special presentation. We meet every week. The community of activists in the Foundation for Climate Restoration. But and what we periodically, we have a founder series meeting. We used to do these every month, and we have decided that we're going to shift to every quarter now, but this is the very first one for this new year, 2025, this new era. And we've got a lot of work before us this coming year and these coming several years. Like I said, so this is a special meeting because we have a special guest, and our special guest, I'm going to let Julia Dederer, who's one of my co-hosts on this call, as well as Joan Bordeaux. We're all co-hosting this call, but I'm going to let Julia Dederer introduce our guest.
We're going to do the mission and vision of F4CR?
We are
going to do that. So, and then
quickly. So okay. Can you pull it up?
Yeah, I'm going to bring that right up here.
Joan, you're going to read it?
I am.
Great. Thank you.
And so share that.
Thank you.
Can you see that, Joan, and everybody else?
I can.
Wonderful.
Big as life. So before we get into the vision and mission of climate restoration, let me tell you what climate restoration means. Climate restoration means restoring the climate to one humans have evolved and thrived in, with CO2 levels below 300 parts per million. Vision, this is the vision of the Foundation for Climate Restoration. Climate restoration by 2050. Climate restoration becomes the overarching goal of climate action by 2030, and then climate is restored by 2050. Our mission is to generate the social license and political will to restore the climate.
Thank you. Okay. You can take down the slide, and I'm really honored to introduce Ejaj Ahmad. I met him a few years ago, and I am totally honored. He became a climate activist in Bangladesh when he was 17 years old, and I'm not going to say more. His story is so inspiring, and he has youth climate activist movement that he's built, and a climate summit, which is a global summit that you'll hear about. And we here at the foundation are very excited to learn from him because the youth in our orbit have gotten very excited and taken off. You know, they've really grabbed the reins of getting this climate restoration out there. Unfortunately, not many of them can be there, given that they're all high school students. They have activities, but they are going to be listening to the recording, and I'm really sorry they can't be in attendance so they can ask Q&A. So we'll turn it over to Ejaj, and then we will have time for a question and answer. Okay. And so let's put it on speaker view for now.
Thank you, Julia. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Perfect. Great. Well, great to be connected. Thank you for inviting me. And I've known Julia and Peter particularly for the last several years. So it's wonderful to be here. And at the outset, let me acknowledge that a lot of my work with young people and climate is informed by Peter's work, and I was deeply inspired to get involved in the climate restoration movement after meeting Peter. In terms of today's presentation, I want to speak for 15 minutes, and then maybe do a Q&A for rest of the time. So I've got a short presentation to tell you about my journey, and then we will move to Q&A.
Can you talk a little bit louder?
All right, yeah. This may be better. Is this better?
Excellent.
Okay, okay. All right. So the way I've structured this is I'll tell you a bit about my journey, and then I will tell you about the two organizations that I'm involved with and my approach to working with young people and climate. So what got me here, key turning points in my life. I grew up in Bangladesh in an academic family in a house full of management books. So I got introduced to management theories and ideas from an early age. And when I was 10 years old, two events in my life that I fondly remember. One was the first poem I wrote. It was on death. My mother was quite upset at me, but I've always had this awareness about mortality, that if I'm going to die, what's the purpose of my time in this world? How am I going to make myself useful? And what's the point of it all? So this has been a theme throughout my life. And the other event was in 1991, Bangladesh was worst hit by flood. And I remember going on a boat distributing relief with my father, who was a part of, he was a Rotarian in the Rotary Club, and I worked with him. And those were my formative experiences of witnessing the impact of climate change in a country like Bangladesh. Fast forward to when I was 18, I go to college. I was in Scotland at St. Andrews studying economics. But because I grew up reading books on management and leadership, I was excited by it. And for 4 years, I read economics, but I was involved in the Students' Union. I got elected in the Students' Union. And in my final year, I ran to be the president of the Students' Union. And I lost that election to one of my close friends. And I thought that was the end of my leadership journey. So, with my heart broken, I moved back to Bangladesh. And and the reason I moved back to Bangladesh was because my father was a freedom fighter. So I come from a family of public servants. They were very committed to Bangladesh and to the welfare of the people, my grandparents, my father, my parents, my mother. So I moved back to give back to Bangladesh, and I started working as an economist. I worked for 3 years, and then I came to the US for graduate school. And when I was in graduate school, I studied for a master's in public policy, and I was involved in the Obama campaign. And in my final year, I wrote my dissertation, my policy analysis on youth leadership. And when I completed my degree, my singular purpose in life at that point was to create opportunities for other young people who did not get the opportunities that I got in life. And that's the first lesson I share with young people, because I also won a lot of business plan competitions. And often young people who win all these competitions never end up starting their own business. So if you want to start your own organization, I think your heart is more important than just logic. So I went back to Bangladesh. I thought I'm going to create an organization, and I launched an organization. And the idea was to transform the country through youth
Wow.
leadership. And I started working from a small room in my father's apartment for 3 years. I did not pay myself, but I was committed to it. And the other lesson I share with young people, and I know this audience is not filled with young people, I saw one or two, but maybe if they listen to this later on, my thinking about career has not been very traditional. Even when I was in university, the way I never looked at career as getting a job and then climbing up the ladder. I looked at work as having two purposes, at least from my perspective. We need work because we need to earn a living. So there is a resource allocation, mobilizing resources for yourself, and the other is having an impact in the world. And when I launched this organization, I was 100% sure that this has to have a business model, because this is my livelihood, this is my purpose, this is my everything. This wasn't a part-time voluntary initiative for me. So from day one, this was my life, my career, my everything was this organization. So fast forward to 2024, we have about 120 full-time staff in Bangladesh. I've got two divisional centers and some hub and spoke models throughout the country. We provide leadership training to young people. We instill values in them. We connect them to jobs, and we help young people become entrepreneurs. So we have a ventures arm. We have online education. We have supported more than 40 businesses in Bangladesh, and we have a range of activities. And our alumni have done tremendous things, including the current revolution, the uprising we had in Bangladesh 6 months ago. Many of the leaders were alumni of our leadership program when 10 years ago they learned about leadership from our center. So I was running this organization, and then I met Peter, Sir Christopher Ball, Sir David King in a leadership course organized by Landmark. It was from Landmark alumni. They organized a leadership course. And at that point, I was thinking about the future of Bangladesh. So this was in 2021. In 2021, Bangladesh turned 50. And it was clear in my mind that the biggest challenge facing Bangladesh over the next 50 years would be climate change. So that was the first realization I had. The second realization I had is climate change is a global problem. You cannot address it by young people in one country just working. You need to collaborate across boundaries and regions because it's a global coordination problem. So that idea led to the launch of the first Global Youth Climate Summit in 2021. It was a phenomenal success. We invested in 12 climate champions. We gave them some funding. This was a virtual summit. So based on the success of this, and I've had initially the idea was there are two climate problems. One is adaptation. Climate vulnerable countries will have to adapt to the realities of climate change. With increasing population, growing per capita income, climate mitigation is also going to become a big problem in the global south. So you have to focus on mitigation, you have to focus on adaptation. And I was fully bought into the idea of restoration, and this idea, which I learned from Peter, that you need to remove the excess CO2 from the atmosphere. Even if your emissions are zero now, what we have up there is sufficient for countries like Bangladesh to go underwater. So we started educating young people, and we, based on the learning from this summit, I launched the Global Youth Leadership Center. Right? We are based in California to mobilize young people. And the theory of change, that what needs to happen in the world, what is our vision, and why are we in this problem in the first place. So we've defined it across three levels. First of all, we believe that climate change, there is a problem at the knowledge level. If young people are educated about climate science, they understand how our individual and collective actions are contributing to a warming planet, they might take better decisions. Okay. So at the knowledge level, we educate young people on climate science. Given the enormity of the problem, you have to operate at scale. So not all of our interventions are not in person. We have an online academy, so we have online education, we do online seminars. There's a lot of hybrid programming that we do to disseminate this knowledge about climate science. So you can think of Peter's content from Sir David King. We would take it, make it understandable for young people, and distribute that content. So that's one. The second problem, I think all of us in this call would recognize that knowledge alone is not sufficient for behavior change. And you know this. We know people who smoke. We know people who have bad habits. We know exercise is good every day. But people, despite knowing a lot of things, are not able to do it. So you need a behavior change. That's where leadership training comes in. So we provide young people leadership training so that they can mobilize themselves, they can mobilize others for individual change and for systemic change. So we have a framework. We educate young people in person, online, to bring about change and give them the tools. A unique problem in the context of global south, in many of these climate vulnerable countries, there is a forum called the Climate Vulnerable Forum. There are 58 countries in Global South, part of that network, and we work across many of those countries. Young people, sometimes they know what the problem is, they have the leadership skills, but they don't have the resources. And it's inspiring for us when we see that young people, just with a little bit of resources, can achieve extraordinary things. So the third approach to our work is providing small grants to young people. So we give them resources, and and if you look at, we've supported 31 champions so far. And if you look at some of our champions from Nigeria, they're doing this advocacy work, raising awareness in classrooms. In Indonesia, they're working on mangrove restoration projects, mobilizing other people. In Bangladesh, using more environment-friendly cooking methods, raising awareness about it. So these are the different types of activities that our climate champions work on. And we organize this global convening, the Global Youth Climate Summit. You saw the first summit in 2021, then we had an in-person summit in 2022, and then we had a big summit 2023 in Tanzania, which brought together young people from 24 countries. And our next summit is going to happen in Brazil in April 2 to 5 at the state of Minas Gerais. We are working with the government of Brazil. Before COP30, we want to set the youth agenda. So that's the big event that we are organizing. 200 young people from around the world and 300 young people will join this virtual summit to learn about climate science, to build their leadership skills, and to take on projects and set the agenda for youth and climate conversations. So this is what I am up to. Maybe I can pause there, take a few of your questions. I have a short video, a 5-minute video. Maybe I can show it at the end of the Q&A, and that will leave you with some inspiration on the kind of work that we do.
Great. You can take down the share. Beautiful. So open up the floor. I have to say how disappointed I am that our youth can't be here in person for Q&A, but that is okay. I know they've reached out to you to interview for their podcast already, haven't they? Yes, so if you just raise your virtual hand, as Philip has, and we'd love to hear from people. Go ahead, Philip, and unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Adrienne, Philip's wife. First of all, I want to acknowledge you for the incredible work you've been doing. It's really amazing and wonderful. But I was wondering, how do you finance the grants for youth leadership?
We work with different
Money come
partners.
from?
We work with different partners. We have individual contributors and some of our different embassies. So we work with different partners to work with to finance these grants. And one of our funders has been Sir Christopher Ball, who was in this leadership course with us. He's been a big champion of this work.
Thank you.
You know, you are still a little bit hard to hear, Ejaj. I mean, we can hear you, but we
Not
kind
very
of have
loud?
to
Okay.
work a little. Yeah. Okay, and Melanie.
Thank you. Pardon me. Really appreciate hearing all of this, Ejaj. And because you have mentioned these grants that young people were getting, if I am in communication with young people in other nations, is there a place like where they can look for guidelines of how they might apply for something, or is there a process that will help bring them in as far as opportunities go?
Yes, they can apply to the summit. So you'd have to apply to the summit and then you can apply. So I'll share the website link in the chat.
Thank you very much. And then as far as Well, let me ask you this. Is the summit the only place when you outline the training that you're providing and which areas those are in for the young people, is that only available through the summit or you mentioned something about online. Is it a hybrid event or they can get training separately? Please explain a little more about that. And yes, links for that would be great. Thank you.
The summit is our annual flagship event where it's a large sort of funnel. Young people come in, we recruit the champions, and then we build their leadership capacity over a period of time. It's not just the grants, also building their capacity. And then we work with other partners, specific, topic-wise leadership training. So we work with, for example, with the World Bank on social accountability. So we designed an online course with the World Bank. And if some other foundation wants to come and work on a particular aspect of climate change, we can build an online course. We have an online academy. And then we can also design customized leadership programs for certain cohorts. We also work with TikTok. We've done some programming with them. It's very much led by conversations with our specific partners on how we design this.
And if there are individuals rather than a group of people, how would they connect with, like, say, the online training or?
They can just, the online course is free for anyone, so they can just go to the website and enroll.
All right, great. And Mark, you'll put those in the chat for us, the website or someone will. Thank you very much. I appreciate the information.
That's great. And I'm going to call on Inger, but we would love to hear from Arnav. We would love to hear from Liliana Koresh, who's the head of the Napa Schools for Climate Action, who are here, and youth. We'd love to hear your voices, your questions or what your vision and what you'd like to share. And so Inger, and then also I see Liliana, you got your hand up. Thank you so much. And okay, and right after Inger, Arias, I know you have your real hand, which is even more impressive than a digital hand. So I'll call on you after Inger. Go ahead, Inger.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for your the amount of work you're doing. I like to ask you a question with a reference for my youth work in Europe called Erasmus, and also as a founder of the World Climate School, and my work in India, Pakistan, and throughout Africa, of course. I think, can you explain what you do when it comes to intergenerational work? And especially in this context, it will be extremely important to get your views on how to work together. Like my work started in year 2000, and we have the Youth Employment Summit in 5 different cities, like South Africa, Egypt, Alexandria, India, etc. So let's intergenerational work. How can we activate that? Because your work is so important, and we need, and for the world, for humanity, and future, for our kids, your kids. So how can we speed up and help each other through generationals? Thank you.
Thank you. Do we take a few questions, or would you like me to respond to each question one at a time?
One at a time.
One at a time. Okay. So, intergenerational collaboration is critical to make progress on this challenge. And in all of our summits, on the first day, we have a panel on intergenerational collaboration. Usually in climate summits, you either have all the adults speaking, or if it's a youth event, all youth speaking. We try to have 50% of youth in our summit. So there's a nice balance of youth speakers, but also experienced leaders from diverse sectors. So we try to bring them together for knowledge sharing and collaboration. And the summit for us is the main platform where we do this. And for collaboration, with your organization, we're happy to explore for our upcoming summit if you want to contribute or if you want to engage. that's something that we can explore.
Great. Inger, why don't you put your contact information in the chat so the two of you can, Ejaj can reach out to you. How's that, Ejaj?
Yes, or if you have young people in your network who would like to join our summit, we are happy to sort of to work with you on that. Just to very quickly show you
Yes,
the
I will
numbers.
share. I will do that.
Yeah, so this
And
is
of course, the European funding structures is also able to be making youth consortiums beyond Europe. So we're having 5 or 6 countries outside Europe join the European partnerships. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the summit that we are going to have in Brazil. We'll have 100 international delegates. But if you look at the number of countries, 130 plus young people from 130 plus countries have already applied. We have crossed 2,000 applications. And the countries with the most interest that we got so far are from Nigeria, Kenya, Bangladesh, Ethiopia, Pakistan, outside of Brazil, Ghana, India, Somalia, Peru, Zimbabwe. But even when we receive the interest from young people, there is a greater appetite to learn about this from youth in climate vulnerable countries in global south. So that's the focus of the work that we are doing in our organization.
Okay, Inger, does that satisfy? And I'm sure you've put your
Yes.
and Josh's, you can reach right out to him. He put his info in the chat also. So Arias and then Liliana. You're on mute, Arias. Uh-oh. There, unmute yourself.
Okay. What I mentioned is I am a Kashmiri wala, which I'm sure Ejaj will understand. I was born and raised in Kashmir in 1940, my birth, and we went through the Pakistan-India partition crisis that killed 13 million people. I have been working in 9 developing countries and I'm very much youth-oriented. My website is childrenofnature.org, O-R-G. And I would also like to support Ejaj's work in any way I can. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. If you would put your contact info for Ejaj in the, do you know how to do that in the chat?
My chat doesn't seem to be working. Let me see if I can get it to work this time.
Here's what you do. You can't even see the chat with his email?
Julia, Mark has Arias's info. Mark can send it to Ejaj.
And we will be sending out a newsletter and we will be sending out the recording of this. So
I found it and I put it on the chat.
You'll be able to get all the information. That's fine. Okay, so Liliana, you're up. Can you come on view for us? It's fine if not.
Hello everyone. I'm super excited to be here. Unfortunately, I'm having some technical issues with my computer, which doesn't happen very often, so I do have to keep my camera off today, but again, I'm really excited to meet all of you all today, and thank you so much, Ejaj, for coming to speak today in this meeting. So the question that I had was, all of your work is so incredible, and you seem to have a very long and extensive journey in climate activist and empowering youth. But I was just wondering, like for me and Sophie, for example, who are up and coming kind of activists as well, what's your biggest piece of advice for us? And what are some of the biggest like hurdles and challenges that you went through throughout your journey?
Can you, and you're finishing high school or you're in college? What's your background currently?
I'm currently a high school senior, so I'm finishing high school right now.
And tell Liliana, tell him what you've done. I mean, for the last 2+ years, you've worked on something that has come to fruition, which is a big deal in the field of climate restoration.
Right, yes, of course. So for the past 3 years or so, I've been leading the organization called Napa Schools for Climate Action, which consists of about, I think, 12 now or so youth climate activists in Napa County. And so in 2023, we started working on a resolution focused on climate restoration. And for an entire school year, we collaborated with, local scientists, school board officials to actually create this piece of policy, and we were successful in passing it in our school district. And then we decided to shift towards, a bigger impact. So we ended up actually collaborating with our congressman's Washington, D.C. Legislative analyst, and we actually created a resolution that was introduced into Congress that focused on calling on the Congress to recognize climate restoration as, a necessity. So yeah, that's what we've been kind of working on. It's been a long journey, but it's definitely been incredibly impactful, and I'm so honored to have led it. But yeah, that's kind of one of our biggest projects, and we also do a lot of other advocacy work that is a bit more local. But yeah,
That's incredible.
thank you so much.
And what's the biggest challenge you're facing right now?
Um, I would say so. Basically, our piece of policy, which was, I think it was called House Resolution 1563, it was introduced in November, and we got a few co-sponsors, but it is a new congressional session now, and we're just trying to work out, a tactic of getting Republican representatives to sign on as co-sponsors so that our piece of policy can be, out of the committees and into the House floor for an actual vote and for it to be successfully passed. So that's kind of like the overarching goal. But, I would just say kind of like promoting it to the other side since it is controlling Congress now since it's majority Republican. So that's kind of been a bit of a tough challenge, kind of finding a successful strategy to reach out to Republican representatives and actually getting them to sign on.
That's incredible. Um, without knowing uh, too much about the context, I think generally where you are, uh, what would be useful is recognizing that climate change is a hard problem. We are not going to find a solution overnight. You're preparing more to run a marathon. So not to get frustrated quickly, to work with partners, build a network of like-minded young people, not just within your community, but I would encourage you to build network connections around the world with young people. And that is the strength of youth. You can use social media and online networks to forge those connections. That's one. And to have an experimental mindset and recognize that we need to have a stomach for failure when we are working on a hard problem like climate change. Because I also get very frustrated. And one of my frustrations is when I was 10 years old, I saw flooding in Bangladesh. No one solved the problem. Then I was 18. No one solved the problem. Now I have two kids. My kids see flooding, but the problem persists. Then what are we doing? We are making incremental changes, but as leading climate scientists and people like Peter would say, that we need to speed up and we need to bring about systemic change, large scale change. And that's why networks are important. I think we cannot address this problem just by working at the individual level. You just, driving an electric vehicle and not using plastics, these are important. But the enormity of the challenge requires us to work at a systemic level. So I think the advocacy work that you're doing is critical, and building networks and working with partners would also be very useful for people like yourself and Sophie.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that advice. That was really helpful. That is one of the things I've been thinking about and we've been kind of trying to do. We actually created a climate restoration resolution toolkit recently. So we're trying to get, do more outreach with that, reach more high school students across the nation and kind of build up our network. And since I've been going off to, I'll be going off to college to Stanford next year, which I'm super excited about. But I'm looking forward to, possibly bringing in some college students to this project as well, because it's so impactful and on such a grand scale that, such a large network is necessary. So thank you for bringing that to my attention and kind of reinforcing that idea.
Fantastic. And good luck with college. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's great. I'm going to jump over to Sophie.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having all of us today, and thank you for inviting us. And thank you for speaking today, Ejaj. I really appreciate all of your responses so far, and thank you for your advice to the youth. Um, I have two quick questions, or maybe not quick, but I have two questions. One of them is related to climate literacy and kind of building a climate curriculum. One of our, as Liliana mentioned, we had two resolutions pass. Our first one was our local school board resolution, and this resolution was kind of like the platform for our later congressional resolution, but this one kind of promised and outlined to try to improve the climate literacy of our local schools. And for the past few months, I've been working on building a climate curriculum, and I've been leading a team of youth through Napa Schools for Climate Action to try to make a curriculum that can be adapted to high schoolers. And as you mentioned earlier today, you believe that one of the most important things as we move forward with addressing climate change is to educate the next generation. So I have a question about that, and I was wondering, when building a curriculum for climate education targeted towards youth, what do you think is one of the most important things to keep in mind, or some like things that you believe are important to include, or I guess just the structure in general? How would you approach it, or how have you approached it?
Is it an online course or an in-person course?
So the hope is that we're going to build a curriculum or at least like a database of resources that teachers in our local district can use and adapt to their existing like courses. So we would be targeting like life science courses and physical science courses for high schoolers.
Fantastic. And of course, I can share my reflections quickly here, but I'm happy to have an offline chat with you if I can contribute in helping you think through this curriculum. I think it's useful to recognize that what is your expected outcome from this course, right? You want young people to do something. So there has to be an action component. And if you have an action component, if you want young people to do something, if you want to see a certain behavior, it cannot be just disseminating knowledge. So knowledge needs to have some application. So whatever you design, if you can have 50% knowledge, however you transfer that knowledge, and then some application, so they do some activity, they learn, they practice, that will be more useful for them. And that's how at least we've been running our leadership programs for the last 16 years. We've done a lot of impact evaluation on our courses, and all of our courses have a very strong leadership in action component. So there is a classroom-based learning, but young people go in the community and apply what they have learned. That's where the real learning takes place. So if you have some application, I think that would be useful.
That's great.
Thank
To be continued. I'm going to call on Arnav now. He is the one representative of Y4CR, Youth for Climate Restoration, which is the arm of F4CR led by the youth. He has to leave in a couple of minutes. So do you want to unmute yourself and
Yeah.
share?
Hi. My name's Arnav. I'm from YFRCR, as Julia said, and I am leading in social media, but I just wanted to talk to you about what we're doing in Y4CR and get your opinion on what we're doing and how we can move forward in the future years. So currently what we're doing is we're making some art and writing competitions to further youth education by informing them of it in a fun, creative way. And we can see what their ideas are and take of climate restoration. And we're also making a children's book or an illustrated book of Peter Fiekowsky's climate restoration book. And those are the two main things we're doing right now. We're also making a restoration radio. And yeah, but I just wanted to get your opinion on, is there anything that some of the youth have done in your program or something that we could do here in the States?
In terms of education or
Um, anything actually, education, um, maybe extracurriculars or some way of informing the youth here on climate restoration, how they can further their knowledge and apply it to real world life.
yeah, we have many examples of young people working on education projects in the community, raising awareness. But you mentioned social media. I think social media can be, and are you based in the Bay Area?
Yes, I am.
All the tech companies are here and you can engage with them and figure out, maybe start with getting some ads from Meta, and you have this children's book, get ads from them, promote it, disseminate the knowledge, raise awareness. The more people you can mobilize, the greater it would be. Arnav, I would encourage you to focus on figuring out what your strengths are, what you're good at, and leveraging those strengths, right? You're living in a tech community. You've got good understanding of social media, and combining those, I think you can create interesting content, distribute it. We have done some work with Meta, and we've got a great partnership with TikTok. And TikTok's problem is people view TikTok as a song and dance platform, right? But they've got billions of users. So they've come to people like us because we have the climate change content. So we work with them. And Arnav, the way we think about our partnership with social media companies are, I'm not an influencer. I have very limited reach. I'm not a celebrity, but TikTok has influencers. And if we partner with the influencers and distribute our content, then a larger number of young people will know, right? So similarly, the book, that the children's book that you're writing, if you find some children's influencers on YouTube, on Meta, work with them and let them to amplify your message, then you can have greater impact.
Thank you so much. And I will start doing that with the rest of my team. That was a really great piece of advice.
Now, watch out. They have already exponentially grown in about the last 6 months. So you watch out for what's going to come out of just this little interaction. Thank you so much. And Arnav, I know you need to leave. I'm going to take the hands of a couple of the earlier generation who'd like to make comments or questions. Carol, you were up first. Carol England.
Okay, I'm wondering, and by the way, I'm listening to you, Ejaj, I am like thrilled. So it is awesome, and I want to thank you. I am, as Julia said, I'm in the older generation. I'm not a youthful person. I'm 82, and but who cares? You know what I mean? So I heard you say the word Rotary. Did you say Rotary and your father?
I did, yes.
My husband is a Rotarian, so I'm familiar with the seventh area of focus being the environment. And I'm wondering if there's someone in your leadership community who has reached out to Rotary. And particularly, there's groups at the high school level. So that's where the youth come in. And that's why I was thinking, I'm wondering if someone's making that
Not
connection.
yet. No, not yet. But my father would be extremely disappointed if I don't join a Rotary Club. So I have to That's something that's on my mind. I'll reach out.
Terrific. And then I know you know that it's worldwide. So those youth are worldwide. So get yourself in there and get it stirred up. I would appreciate that. Being a grandmother, Yeah, so thank you so much for your work. I appreciate it.
Oh, that's so great. Barbara Bramble? You're on mute still, Barbara. Let Ejaj know.
There you go. Okay.
You're
You did this exactly right, Julia. I'm so glad.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Go
Did you have a
ahead.
question? This is Barbara. Did you have a
Oh,
question?
that's another Barbara. Which one?
I had to step away for a second.
Bramble, she had her hand up. Sorry.
Oh.
Okay, I'll start and then others, please chime in. Julia, you did this exactly right. I'm so glad that Liliana and Sophie had their chance to talk with Ejaj. It was just lovely to listen, and I'm so grateful. This call has been a marvelous inspiration. I just have one comment for Liliana and Sophie, and then a question for Ejaj. My sense is that you guys have done the most amazing thing with your resolutions. The federal level, of course, is going to be this nightmare for quite some time, but states are exactly the right place to hear your argument, to take up the resolution, and to pass it in hopefully in great numbers. I actually gave a copy of what you all had submitted to the U.S. Congress to my state legislatures, both Senate and House, here in Maine, where I live. And I think that would be a enormously impactful way to take the work you've already done. If it makes it around half the states, you're going to have an extraordinary movement, which will force the federal hand eventually. So don't give up. Persistence pays, as Ejaj said. That's one quick comment. But Ejaj, my question is, in your education work and your leadership training, I'm guessing from how you presented the climate problem that you are working with young people on both reducing emissions and on the whole idea of climate restoration as kind of a partnership, and it needs to proceed maybe at the same time. But do you find anyone saying, because I have, and it's very dispiriting, oh gosh, we can't be talking about climate restoration because that lets the fossil fuel people off the hook. It's kind of a moral hazard. It's going to allow business as usual. Everybody's going to say, oh, well, what I do doesn't matter because we can always pull the carbon out of the air someday, maybe. But obviously they don't mean it, but they're using it as an excuse to kind of do nothing now. And I was wondering how you present that, what sort of balance, what you run into in terms of your youth partners' attitudes and how you would recommend kind of presenting that conundrum. It's the moral hazard ethical issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara, I think it requires a nuanced approach. I think it's not this or that. I think we need to work on both challenges. Restoration is critical. At the same time, mitigation needs to happen. And at the same time, adaptation needs to happen. What is happening in the global south countries is because of the loss and damage, and often the rich countries not keeping their word, which is something we learned in the landmark forum, that you have to honor your word. Then there is no trust. There is a trust deficit, and we go all of these COP events. Like the last COP in Baku was a finance COP.
Disaster.
We come up with numbers, but no one keeps their word, right? So then what we figured out, Barbara, our strategy from the Global Youth Leadership Center, from our unique position, is educate young people and ask them what resonates to you the most, which problem do you care about the most. You cannot just be sitting at home and doing nothing. Figure out which problem matters to you most, and what resources you have that you can leverage and work on it. And sometimes a young person sitting in Nigeria or Tanzania will not have the resources to work on carbon sequestration other than just mangrove plantation or something like that. They don't have access to large technologies, expensive technologies. But given the resources they have, what can they do? And we educate them. Maybe some of them 5 years down the line, 7 years down the line will pursue careers in this track. We are planting all of these seeds. I cannot tell you the exact impact it's going to have, but we are trying out different interventions.
Okay, seeds in each of them is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Barbara, put your info in the chats publicly so Liliana and Sophie can contact you about doing the same thing. We've got just a few more minutes, and Andy, your hand was up, but it probably came down automatically. And Andre, we may have time for you as well. Andy, did you have your hand up and it automatically got pulled down because you were waiting in line too long?
Thanks, Julia. I actually took it down thinking there wasn't gonna be enough time, but thank you for calling on me. Ejaj, thank you for inspiring me personally and for the work you're doing around the globe to connect youth, educate youth, empower youth. My question is, I'd sure like to see the numbers of the United States youth at your summits higher. It's amazing to see people from all other countries participating. Given your experience here in the States, we talked about some of the social platforms after Arnav's share. Is there anything else you can think of ways to grow our youth movement with the Foundation for Climate Restoration, Y4CR, to reach youth who maybe are interested but aren't familiar with climate restoration? Anything else maybe you haven't shared yet, how to engage them, meet them where they're at?
Great questions, Andy. Thank you. I think the work that you are doing is not an American challenge, it's a global challenge. And I think it's important not to look at it through the lens of just one country, the United States. I think it's important to have a global perspective on this. And for that to happen, we need to figure out how to get young people from around the world join this conversation, right? One starting point can be for young people from your network joining us at the summit in Brazil. At the first summit in Bangladesh, we did not have any participants from the US. We thought it's Bangladesh, fair enough. The second one was in Tanzania, and the US ambassador was so excited because, it's got all of the Zanzibar and all the safaris and everything. Tanzania has got a great tourism appeal. We had one speaker from California, a marine biologist. She was there. And then now the one in Brazil, we are taking young people to Iochin, which is one of the largest open air museums in the world. It's going to be incredible. So we are hoping that a lot more youth from the US will have an appetite to come. We've got great application, but we'd love to also engage with young people in your network. If they can come in person, that's great. If not, they can join virtually. So either way, I think it would be a great opportunity to get the climate restoration agenda in our summit, because our summit, mind you, we are working with Marina Silva, who is the environment minister of Brazil, and hosting COP30 in Belém in November. And the summit that we are going to have is going to produce the Belo Horizonte Youth Climate Declaration, which is aspiration of young people. That will be presented to the minister, which is going to shape the youth agenda at COP30. So there is an opportunity for climate restoration being a feeder in that resolution. So yeah, we encourage young people, and happy to have a chat with young people in your network.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Ejaj. That's going to be the last question. I'm glad you had the opportunity to speak about the Brazil conference. I think we have a couple of people in Y4CR who are planning to, what do you call it, ask to be in it. online. And I'm glad you brought that out, that opportunity. And if you know of other people who might want to find out about it and apply for it, you've got Ejaj's info in the chat here. Ejaj, any final words? We have one more little announcement. Yeah.
Julia, Ejaj, we could have more from Y4CR if you would give us more exceptions. We'd be happy to send more from Y4CR. I'll message you about that.
Yeah, let them apply. I've shared the website link. There is a process.
Yeah.
And then they can,
The exception she's talking about is, Joan asked if it really is for young people 18 and over. But in the case of these several people who might apply online, he's let it be for people under 18 as well. To apply, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be accepted. So any final remarks? And then I just want to say one more thing before we end this wonderful evening.
Can I say something?
Anything else?
Yes. It's Karen Brown. How are you?
Hey, Karen.
Is everybody safe, firstly? Where you're located? Is everybody okay? God, I hope. All right. So many friends lost homes. I can't even begin. So basically, I just wanted to reach out to you guys because Blue Sky is extraordinary. And if you're not on it, you're really, really missing. So I think it's crucial that everybody get on, put a banner, a bio, a photo, a profile photo, and start using it. Once you're on it, feel free to email me and Inger and send us your handle so that we're going to create a starter pack. And that starter pack is going to connect all of you to each other. And once that happens, you will have a network in place.
Okay.
We now have 16,300 followers on the Climate School account. I have personally 65,000 plus on my personal account. These accounts are growing so fast that it's like lightning. There are no ads. You can control your own feeds. It is not like any other social media out there. It is a brand new game.
Thank you,
Okay?
Karen.
So I just want to emphasize the importance. There are climate scientists, journalists, everybody's on this thing. Mark Cuban is screaming at every single tech conference he goes to. Get on Blue Sky.
Karen, we've got to stop now. We've exceeded our time.
Okay.
Thank you very
Joan.
much.
Great.
Ejaj, final remarks, and then I have one more final thing to say.
Just thank you everyone for joining this call. Really appreciate it and look forward to staying in touch. I've given you my email if you have any questions. Happy to explore opportunities for collaboration. Thank you.
This has just been extraordinary, Ejaj. Just deeply want to thank you. And for everyone who has not put your name in the chat, we would love to continue to be in touch with you. We would love you to, we have these calls once a week and be part of the climate restoration membership group. We have different teams that are working on different projects this year and would love you to be part of that if you're not. And on that note, Mark, turning it over to you. Any last sentence from you?
The only last sentence is we're so thrilled to have so many people here participating. We haven't had this many people on one of these calls for a long, long time, maybe more than ever. And so many new faces. And if we haven't given us your contact info, please put it in the chat if you want to be on our contact list. And we'll send out an email about once a week if you do. And we'd love to. And Karen is already asking for people to put in your Blue Sky handles if you have them, and you can put those in the chat now too, and we'll make sure she gets those.
All right.
Thank
Have
you,
a great
everybody.
evening or whatever time of day it is or night.
Right.
Good night. Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
That was great.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Beautiful call. Thank you everyone for making it
Thank
such a
you.
great call. Bye everyone. Bye everyone.